my college degree was barely dry when the weight of student loans loomed over me. Jobs in my field were scarce, and I felt the pinch of every dollar not earned. So when I heard about a security position at a sprawling horse ranch, I jumped at the chance. The pay was generous, especially for someone like me who just needed to keep watch over some expensive horses, and I grew up on a ranch. My first day, the beauty of the ranch in the evening took my breath away. Acres upon acres of land stretched out, and horses grazed peacefully under the warm evening sky. The beauty of the ranch during daylight gave way to eerie silences and total darkness at night. It wasn't just the isolation of the place, but the thick blanket of stars above that made everything feel so small. The main house and the barns became tiny islands in an ocean of night. One particular night, a few weeks into the job, I noticed something odd. Distant lights appeared on the horizon. Not city lights, not stars, but something in between. At first, I thought they were perhaps a distant vehicle. But as I watched, they started to move, not randomly, but in deliberate patterns. Zigzagging, looping, then darting away, only to return. The show continued for what felt like hours before finally fading away. I was both fascinated and unnerved. The horses reacted like they were uneasy about them, too. The next morning, driven by a mix of curiosity and concern, I approached one of the longtime ranch workers, an older man named Jose. He was reliable, sharp, and a champion cowboy in his day. He said he had seen them. That many people had, actually. He explained that the old-timers used to warn their people about them. The lights would lure people into the woods, and that the people would disappear without a trace. He warned me to never follow them, too. Besides, the horses didn't trust them, and he had a rule of always trusting a horse's intuition. It was simple logic, but he was deadly serious about it. From that night on, the job took on a new dimension. We saw the lights a few more times. They even flew over the main house and horse barn once, although I didn't get a good look at them. No one knows what they are. I worked as a security guard at a big energy company. The job always felt routine and was very boring for the most part. One night was really interesting, though. I remember I was in the control room, surrounded by multiple screens showing every angle of the vast property and buildings. The room was dim, lit mainly by the glow of the monitors. I was checking from screen to screen, making sure everything was as it should be. When my gaze landed on the feed from the truck maintenance building, my heart skipped a beat. Human-like figures moved in and out of view. I couldn't see their faces, but their silhouettes were clear. They walked with a strange gracefulness. It was really odd. My mind raced, trying to find an explanation. Workers at that hour weren't likely at all. I quickly checked the system. The motion sensors in the maintenance building weren't tripped, and the door alarms were silent. Everything indicated that the building should have been empty. I called over a more experienced contractor. Maybe it was a technical glitch, or just my tired eyes playing tricks. I decided to pull up the camera for the main door. Locked. There's no way they got in that way. But without a doubt, there were what looked like people moving inside. We both saw them. After a few moments, the figures literally disappeared, leaving the building empty again. I spoke with some colleagues about the incident who were on patrol. One of them went to the building to inspect it. Everything was in its place, just like any other night. The doors were locked, and there were no signs of anyone being there. The incident remained a mystery. Some coworkers thought we were seeing things, while others shared stories of their own unexplained experiences on the property. Now, every time I sit in that control room, a part of me wonders if I will see those things again. My name is Eric, and I used to be a security contractor on a military base. It was a small Air Force base that backed up to an area that was complete swampland. I really liked this job, except for one thing. We had to do nightly patrols of that fence line bordering the swamp. I've been previously deployed and have been to some nasty locations, but this one just gave me the creeps. I never really could put my finger on what exactly I didn't like about it, but my intuition told me something was wrong with it. I wasn't alone either. The other guys, who were mostly veterans as well, shared my uneasiness. It's funny to think of a bunch of armed, seasoned professionals feeling weird about a particular piece of land, but that's exactly what it was. One specific night, I learned that my intuition was spot on. The weather that night was overcast, and it had rained earlier. Our reports showed that a bad storm system would be coming to our location during the night. So we decided to conduct our fence patrol early in order to avoid being out in it. It was a fairly normal night, maybe a little darker than normal as we patrolled in our truck. I can't remember exactly what made us stop at a particular spot, but we had stopped to check on something. Maybe the fence itself? The area smelled awful. A stench like rotting garbage and something decaying. It was obnoxious, and nothing you could do would hide it. As my buddy was documenting whatever was wrong, I swung my spotlight over the tree line. I couldn't see anything that would cause the smell. It was really quiet, but then we both heard a strange sound at the same time. It was like a baby was crying just inside the woods. I can't describe it any other way. I looked at my buddy, and he brought out his spotlight as well. When he did that, the sound stopped. We quickly scanning the woods again, but found nothing. I didn't want to, but I radioed in that we were hearing what sounded like someone crying. I think the guys covering the radio thought we were playing a joke on them. They didn't respond for a while. When they did, we got orders to pack it up and return to our security post. As we turned off our spotlights and were about to get back in the vehicle, the sound started again. I think we were both glad to get out of there, even though the order didn't really make sense. We never got an explanation for what happened. The guys monitoring the cameras never saw anything either, even with the thermals. People have told me we probably were hearing a mountain lion or something similar, but I don't agree with that at all. There's no way. I think the one thing all security guards can agree on is that having weird stuff occur around you is just part of the job. I've worked in security since I got out of high school. The company I work for contracts us out to various companies and properties, usually just until they can provide their own. I've had a lot of strange things happen to me, especially at night. My favorite story to tell is the job I took up in northern NY. It was a mostly indoor medical facility, and there were only 2 entrances, so we were stationed at those places. It was fall, and the snow had finally arrived. It hadn't accumulated much at that time, so we were more active in patrolling around the buildings, mostly just making sure the pathways were clear. and the doors remained locked. The place had a really nice camera system that we relied on heavily, but it's always good to double check. I was making a round one night and was just about finished. I reached this one portion in which there's a space between two buildings with a walkway. Everything was normal, and we hadn't noticed anything out of place, but at that spot, I found footprints leading into the snow. It was odd, because there was no reason for anyone to have to step off the walkway. The other reason it was strange is because the footprints just stopped. I followed them into this grassy area of the property, and they just simply vanished. The snow couldn't have covered the rest up. They just weren't there. To add to that, no one showed up on the cameras either. We never did come up with a good explanation, but several of us tried to figure it out with no luck. Weird stuff happens all the time in some of those remote places. I'm going to be honest up front and admit that I am a believer in paranormal stuff. So I'm biased. But I had a job one time at a hotel as an overnight security guard. Basically, a rent-a-cop kind of situation. But the hotel was required to have one, as they did have a small bar in the lobby. It was a very laid-back position, and I don't remember ever having to actually do anything much. The hotel was a wealthy one, and the clients were mostly older types. Weird, ghostly stuff used to happen all the time. Things would go missing that were just there. We would see odd shadows on the cameras. People would report being touched by something that wasn't there. All sorts of issues. My favorite experience was when a guest had called in to the main desk, asking for an item that we kept in stock, just in case. I offered to run it up, since there wasn't much to do. I take the elevator, and just as I'm stepping off of it, I clearly hear a child laughing. It was one of those joyful giggles that make just about everyone smile. I turned to look, expecting a younger kid to be there playing. The halls were completely empty. I didn't do much investigating, but I was a little uncomfortable. I deliver the item to the guest and ask if they had heard any kids running around. They stated that the evening had been nice and quiet. I get back to the front desk and ask the receptionist if we have any families staying with us tonight. She had been on duty all day, and none had come in. I told her what I heard, and she just casually mentioned she had heard it too. I was a little shaken, but at least it sounded like the ghost was having a great time. The transition from active duty military to retirement wasn't smooth for me. It left a void, a kind of emptiness that was hard to explain. So, when the opportunity arose to work night shifts as a security guard at a warehouse, I took it. I figured it'd be a walk in the park, just a way to keep my nights occupied and earn a little extra cash. The first few months on the job were routine at the warehouse. Every shift was a predictable pattern. Patrol the aisles, check the entrances, scan the security footage. The only sound breaking the silence was the constant hum of the overhead lights. It was monotonous, but comforting in its own way. But on that night, as I made my way down one of the aisles, a sudden, chilling scream broke the calm. It echoed through the long stretches of the warehouse, sending shivers down my spine. It was distinctly a woman's scream, dripping with raw fear. Instinctively, my military training kicked in. I reached for my radio and urgently asked the control room, "Did you catch that on the cameras?" The The response was immediate but puzzling. Everything was all clear, and no activity had been detected. But I was certain of what I'd heard. The sound seemed to have come from close by. I rushed in the direction I thought I heard it from. Every footstep was extremely loud in the cold, vast space. As I neared where I suspected it came from, there was absolutely nothing. My flashlight cut through the darkness, moving from box to box, shelf to shelf. But there was no sign of anyone, nothing out of the ordinary. Control room checked in, asking what I had heard. I was hesitant to say. Doubt was starting to creep into my mind, but I told them anyway. They reiterated they hadn't heard anything, and no sensors were going off. Determined to uncover the source, I meticulously combed through each aisle, each corner of the warehouse. Yet, with each passing moment, the mystery deepened. There was nothing I could find. Hours seemed like minutes, and before I knew it, my shift was coming to an end. I was left with more questions than answers, and the weight of the unexplained weighed heavily on my mind. To this day, I've never heard those screams again, nor have I found an explanation for them.